हेलो फ्रेंड्स, आज हम इस वीडियो में इंडस्ट्रियल डिस्प्यूट एक्ट में तीन टर्म्स यूज होते हैं, ले ऑफ, रिट्रेंचमेंट एंड क्लोजर. सो लेट अस अंडरस्टैंड द मीनिंग ऑफ रिट्रेंचमेंट एज गिवन अंडर इंडस्ट्रियल डिस्प्यूट एक्ट 1947. तो आईडी एक्ट रिट्रेंचमेंट के बारे में क्या डिफाइन करता है उसके बारे में जानेंगे. सो लेट मी शेयर माई स्क्रीन विद यू. ओके, सो व्हाट इज रिट्रेंचमेंट? लेट अस रीड थ्रू द डेफिनेशन and then we will understand point by point what is the sense of the term retrenchment. Okay, so it says retrenchment means the termination by the employer of the service of the workman. Here the termination of the services of the employee is been taking place by the employer. Okay, so here the main point is termination by the employer of the service. Okay, for any reason whatsoever. So it can be any reason otherwise than as a punishment inflicted by way of disciplinary action. So first of all, we must understand this phrase of the definition, which is nothing but which is the excluding part of the definition of retrenchment. Okay. So otherwise than as a punishment inflicted by way of disciplinary action means that whatever is the reason of termination by the employer of the service of the workman, the reason should not be termination of the employee as a result of punishment or any disciplinary action against the employee by the employer. Okay, so this is nothing but this is referring to the exception of the retrenchment only. It means if employer is terminating the services of the employee by way of punishment inflicted by way of disciplinary action against such employee, then that is not retrenchment. That is not termed as retrenchment under the ID Act. So this is one exclusion. Other exclusions are specifically mentioned as you can see under point A, B, C and D. So let us understand these points one by one. First says retrenchment does not include voluntary retirement of the workman. So this is all logical. When a workman himself or herself is retiring from the service, that will not tantamount to retrenchment. Simple. Okay. So he himself or herself is retiring on his or her own. So that is why that is not the part of the retrenchment. Coming on to the second point. Second point says retrenchment does not include retirement of the workman on reaching the age of superannuation. Superannuation is when you reach on to certain age, like for example 58 or 60. But that has to be specifically mentioned under the contract of employment. Okay, so let me read through first. Retirement of the workman on reaching the age of the superannuation if the contract of employment between the employer and the workman concerned contains a stipulation in that behalf. So this the essence of this whole line means that whenever a particular employee reaches a particular age, for example 58 or 60, and this has been incorporated in the contract of employment that if you reach this age, you will be retired from the service. Okay, so then that does not form the part of retrenchment. So two things are there. The employee has already reached that age and that age has been mentioned in the contract of employment as agreed in between the employee and the employer. Okay. Third point says termination of the service of the workman as a result of the non-renewal of the contract of employment between the employer and the workman concerned on its expiry or of such contract being terminated under a stipulation in that behalf contained therein. This is very simple that whenever there are certain kinds of employments where the workman works for the employer under a contract. So if the time period of that contract is over, then workman is supposed to leave the service, leave the job, right? So if the contract is not renewed by the employer and workman is leaving the organization or any such employer, then that case does not fall into the category of retrenchment. ठीक है? because the contract was there in between the employer and the employee, and that time period of contract has now been expired, and that is the reason where the workman is leaving the organization or leaving the job. So this case also is not covered under the definition of retrenchment. ठीक है. Next point is termination of the service of the workman on the ground of continued ill health. So if the employee is not able to come to the organization because of his or her health reasons, then and the services of such employee is being terminated by the employer, then such termination does not fall into the definition of retrenchment. Okay, so these are the grounds wherein specifically the act is mentioning that what does not amount to retrenchment. First is VRS. Second is when the worker is retiring on reaching the age of superannuation, and that too as agreed in between the employer and the employee under the contract of employment. Third one is non-renewal of the contract under which the employee is working for the employer. And fourth one is termination of the services of the workman on the ground of the ill health. So what can be the cases of the retrenchment then, if these are not the cases of the retrenchment? So that too very simple. So any kind of downsizing where the employer is facing any kind of financial distress, or any technology upgradation is happening in the organization and the employer thinks that the worker is not no more fit for the organization, and he is terminating the services of such an employee, right? Or any form of restructuring is taking place in the organization and the termination of the employees has been happening. So these are all circumstances which we can take as the case of retrenchment, right? So that's it from my side. Thank you so much.